August 26th, 1883 at 10:02 a.m. in the morning, the loudest sound in recorded history happened.
And I can only imagine that it felt from miles away like it was the apocalypse.
Yeah, well, it was for people that were, several hundred miles away. It literally was the end of days. For
Insane.
Those outside of that, then it became something absolutely crazy. But it was heard for over 3,000 miles away. It traversed the globe with reverberant percussions. So imagine dropping a brick in a pond, but now make the pond spherical. That's kind of what we have.
Right.
Right?
So, of course, we're talking about Krakatoa.
That's right. We are talking about Krakatoa.
The famous volcano
That's right.
That erupted in 1883 and killed 36,000 people.
It's the earworm crawling through your brain tonight. Studio stories and the gear we like. Breaking down the songs that change the form. Once you hear the hook, you can't outrun. Bryan, and Patrick having fun.
But that's the Dutch estimates, who were the they had colonized the island at the time.
Sure.
But other estimates put it up above 125,000.
Wow.
Yeah, because so many coastal villages were completely just erased. So imagine this: you would hear it and then immediately just basically be dead.
Yeah.
Because sound is a pressure wave, right?
Right.
That's what it is. It's a pressure wave, and so we know when we make noise, it disturbs the molecules in the air because of an emitted pressure wave, right? And it has a compression and a rarefaction.
Right.
In other words, a peak and a valley. If we were thinking about a waveform,
We've all felt at a concert, you
Yes.
feel the sound. I mean, that's and you've heard it in different ways. But when you go to a show, especially like maybe an EDM show or a festival, the bass rattles you.
Yeah.
Physically rattles you. I remember being in a demo for Bass Boss, which is a great company from Texas, makes line array and PA speakers. And I remember going into a demo for one of their giant subs and some of their tops, but I felt like my soul totally escaped my body for a moment and came back in at the end of it. It was the wildest experience, like mentally, physically, you feel that pressure.
Yeah, it is. And especially on those sub-frequencies, and especially quick sub-frequencies, or even prolonged sub-frequencies that are really low, you can really feel, you can feel it.
Yeah, and it's dangerous. I mean, we were talking about this volcano, but it's extremely dangerous.
Well, if our conversation derails even further into LRADs, then we are talking about acoustic weaponry. Yeah.
Let's keep on track.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. So this happens August 26, 1883. Krakatoa erupts 4 times, but essentially sends shockwaves around the world. So it could be heard 3,000 miles away. I can't. It's so hard to even just fathom something that loud. Right. I mean, imagine like I'm in LA, you're in New York, and you yell something loud enough for me to hear it in Los Angeles.
Of course, 4 hours later, right?
4 hours later. Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
Right. So if we extrapolate that over the distance, it'd be about 4 hours.
It's unbelievable. There's nothing, it's hard to wrap my head around something that loud. I just don't, it's unfathomable to me.
Yeah.
Like I want to say, what does that sound like? But I don't, because I'm dead. Right?
Right. So this was over 180 decibels. And when we start to get into measurement of sound, then things have this weird we have this weird thing that diverges between scientific measurement and then how we experience those measurements, right? Like most science, it's kind of the same thing. So when we start measuring sound, 180 decibels is the loudest natural event in recorded history. That's basically what Krakatoa was. So
the loudest, a single event.
And we have to think about a bunch of different things. One, we as we talk, especially musicians and those who hear sound and love music and so on and so forth, we think of decibels, right? And dBFS, which is decibels at full scale. So there's lots of different ways that we measure how loud something is. Turns out our ear is not very good at being able to register how loud something is because we have a tendency to get used to it In much the same way that we can get used to a room that has like maybe a musty smell, and then after we're in it for about 20 or 30 minutes, we don't register it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's different ways of measuring it. There's lots of different ways. So here's what it is, because sound is a pressure wave, but you can have a pressure wave happen that doesn't register to us in an auditory way. So when we have hypersonic, or we have infrasonic, right, or anything that's below or above human range of hearing, we can still feel those pressure waves, but we can't hear it.
Again, go to the concert, go to a EDM show. Sometimes you really don't literally hear the bass.
Yeah,
because they're in that zone.
Yeah, and that
where
can
you just feel it. Yeah,
yeah, and if it's done loud enough, then they can find the brown note and make you shit yourself.
Yeah, or Mr. Holland's Opus, his son was deaf, right, and he would lean on the speakers so he could feel music.
Yes,
which is
interesting.
Yeah, totally cool concept.
I love it. Yeah. Well, so it can happen. So what we're trying to do is to get this idea of how loud Krakatoa was. We have to do several kind of conversions here.
Sure.
We have to convert a sound pressure wave into measuring something that's decibel related, and then try to figure out how loud that would be if we were going to hear it.
So in this equation, we're trying to conceptualize what we think it would sound like.
Yeah.
Like mathematically,
right.
10 times this or whatever.
Exactly.
Right.
And to be sure, there were parts of this explosion that we would have heard auditorily. But there's also the sound pressure wave itself that could expand out into well beyond below and above human hearing range. We can only detect what our ears give us, and that's basically 20 hertz to 22 or 20.
And that can modulate depending on the surface that it travels over, right? Now, if it's over a glassy ocean, it moves faster, right?
It depends.
Okay.
It totally depends on what's the temperature.
Gotcha.
So there's so many other factors.
Yeah.
But as we know, there's pockets of the ocean that are still at any given moment. But when you're talking about 3,000 miles, you're going to be going over. Totally. Yeah. So we're dealing with this massive percussive blast of sound, right? Of sound pressure waves. So when we try to convert it into what can we hear, on average, if you just want to be safe, you could just say from 20 hertz to 20K. So from 20 to 20K. That's basically what the human ear can perceive. Okay, so we're talking about now, we're looking at something that is in excess of 180 decibels. This is deadly, literally deadly as a pressure wave in the sense that it can kill you. A percussive blast of that magnitude can first render you completely deaf irreparably. Your eardrums will not heal. It will destroy the inner ear, the cochlea, the hammer, the stirrup, all of those beautiful mechanisms that happen inside the inner ear. Irreparable. You'll be deaf permanently if you survived it. There were sailors that were having their eardrums ruptured 100 miles away. Right? So, but the people that were less than that were going to be dead just from the blast itself. But if that didn't kill them, the 125-foot tsunami would. And get this, it was happening at such a speed that it was these 125-foot waves were traveling at, you ready for this? 300 miles an hour.
Something so big going so fast. Another thing, it's like unfathomable to visualize a 300 mile an hour, 125-foot tidal wave.
Yeah,
there's no chance. You see it and you're gone. You're dead.
Right. How many times have we been driving, through? I mean, you and I were born in New Orleans, so we know about bugs on windshields, just like most people. But in the South, particularly when we get down to coastal South,
sure,
a lot of creatures flying around in the air at night, right? How many times have you been going on the freeway at 90 miles an hour and a bug hits it and it's just like that, right? Imagine 3 times that speed and a human being. There's no chance.
Yeah.
There's no running away. There's no prep. There's no warning.
It's when it's moving that fast, it's like a wall of concrete, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 300 miles an hour. 300 miles an hour. Absolutely. Yeah. Because let's think about that. So for any of you guys who've ever been skydiving, right, or whatever, which I've done, where you do the tandem thing and the guy's on your back and you're, doing the whole thing. It was amazing. You can see the curvature of the Earth. It was awesome. So for flat earthers, we have news for you.
Yeah. Go skydiving.
Right.
But, figure it out.
But when you reach terminal velocity, right? So when you do like the Felix Baumgartner, you remember when he jumped from the stratosphere and he just went into like terminal velocity and he finally reached, because there's a point at which when you drop an item and gravity takes effect, it can't go any faster, right? It just reaches terminal velocity. That's it. That's it. Okay. So for a human being falling, we were going about 110 miles an hour. That was terminal velocity. If you hit a body of water at 110 miles an hour, you're dead. Yeah, it's going to feel splat. Exactly like Earth.
So that's interesting relativity to visualize. Falling at terminal velocity is 110 miles an hour, but this thing's coming at you at 300 miles an hour.
300 miles an hour. I mean, think about F1 cars. Think about whatever the fastest land speed.
The fastest thing you can think of, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, there's no time to think. It's instant death, which is merciful in a way. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, if you're going to go.
On-off switch.
If you're going to go, I'll take that.
That's probably the best.
Yeah.
Best way.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
But holy crap. So this was Krakatoa. I mean, it was amazing. But the other part is, let me just read some of the scientific stuff because I can't keep all this in my
head. Great. It's so cool.
Okay. So here's something amazing. When it exploded, we went from basically the islands went from 450 meters to 250 meters below sea level. That's basically how much the Earth's water essentially just rarefaction, just before it bounced up again.
Yeah.
Right.
And not only that, I mean, it changed the entire area. I mean, a new island came out of it.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So there was a plume of smoke that reached into the sky for 17 miles, just right up into the atmosphere. Right. It's unbelievable. So let's just get another idea of like 3,000 miles. So we did LA to New York. It's also the same thing as if we were in Boston and you were playing your bouzouki and your bowron in an Irish band in Dublin.
Right.
That's basically the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So for the Irish out there,
yeah.
That might want a better perspective.
17 miles into the air, though, like I find that to be crazy because you can see that from such a far distance, too. You can see it from... So if it's 17 miles into the atmosphere, they can see it from how far away?
Yeah.
Estimate.
Absolutely. Well, here's every barograph around the world recorded a passage of the airwave for up to 5 days. So the pressure waves went around the Earth 3 to 4 times. Stuff spewed out of the volcano at 1,600 miles per hour. Just massive ejections, right? So that's half a mile a second.
It's all molten rock and earth that is being spewed that fast.
Yep. Yeah.
That far.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there was about 165 coastal villages and settlements that were just absolutely, just swept away and destroyed almost immediately. It spewed more than 5 miles of magma and debris all up into the atmosphere. And because of that, we started to find that volcanic ash was carried around the globe in 13 days. So it was producing blue and green suns and moons. It was when the sun would set, it would produce these surreal red sunsets. So much so that local firefighters were concerned that the cities were on fire, or towns or villages were on fire, because it was so vivid.
It makes me think about like that era, 1880s. In Europe and different places where you have like transitional religion, and you can think of like, oh my God, did we do something wrong? And it's like, because it feels so apocalyptic when you have a blue sunset or a green sunset. It's like, did we anger the gods?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. All of those types of myths would come raging into reality. Yeah. Well, okay, so there were optical effects that covered over 70% of the Earth. That was happening as a result of this. So, there's a famous painting by Edvard Munch called The Scream, right? And it's that, that kind of scream thing. And there's this crazy sun. Well, that was painted around the same time as this had happened, right? And at the time, like in early 2010s, it might have been around 2012, that painting sold for $120 million. So this is sort of in this weird optical illusion phase of the fallout from Krakatoa.
I'd be interested to see the effects on different cultural phenomenon in that era, just to see like what did art look like when people were looking at this happening. Like what are the examples of sculpture and different preservations of history.
Very cool.
That would probably be an interesting deep dive.
It was like us. We did
like how did it influence the world and it's changing?
Yeah. You remember when we passed and we had a meteor shower and a borealis, where the borealis was over Nashville a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
We could go out right in our front yard and watch the effects of the borealis over us. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
So I can only
had
imagine.
it a few weeks ago.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's not uncommon.
Yeah.
But we just typically don't get a chance to see it.
Sure.
Especially in our part of the hemisphere. But the cool part about all of this stuff is they started to track. Meteorologists started to track where the smoke was actually streaming around the world, and that led us to the discovery of the jet stream, because we didn't really know about it before then.
And then we could just automatically see it.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, you could see the movement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild.
It's amazing. So I think, when we're looking at that of loudness scale, how does that compare to humanity? So this is sort of where it kind of comes into us. So for us, typically the threshold of pain when we listen to something really loud is around 120 decibels. If you're exposed to that for more than 30 seconds, you will have hearing loss. Not permanent, but you will lose a part of your hearing, right? That's when you're at threshold of pain. Typically, rock concerts are right around that sort of 115 to 117 decibels.
Wear your earplugs.
Absolutely wear your earplugs. Yeah. I mean, that's the most important. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
We'll do our PSA.
Yeah.
But I think when we're talking about that, that's really, 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 really loud. So conversation like what we're having right now, we're probably around 65 dB. If we got a decibel and we started to if it was A-weighted, we'd be able to there's different ways of measuring RMS, root mean square, relative loudness over time. But when we start getting into that, a typical conversation is about 60 to 70 decibels, right? A hairdryer around 90 decibels. Gunshot.
Wow, that's loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it is.
Gunshot, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Gunshots can go. I'm talking about like a handheld.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a pistol or something. They'll range in this sort of like 112, sort of ballpark. Yeah. So what our ears are not particularly equipped for. Inside the inner ear, we have what's called the cilla. And they're tiny, like little whiskers. They're very fine. And when basically what the ear does is, how we get goosebumps on our skin? When the ear encounters a very loud sound, it stimulates the cilla. And the cilla basically stand up, just like your hair follicles do when we get goosebumps. It's meant as a way of protecting the ear so that it doesn't get damaged. Well, when you have a prolonged exposure to a loud sound, those cilla eventually get blown out as if like in a tornado, trees just get uprooted and they never grow back. So when you lose that inner part of your ear, that cilla, you're going to have hearing loss.
Yeah.
And that translates into loss of high frequencies, particularly certain bandwidth sometimes can be devastating if you're overexposed. So that can be really hard on our hearing by doing that. But the most devastating that we have, at least in the sense of what we listen to every day, are short percussive sounds. So drummers, sorry, but you are, hurting us more than helping in some ways, especially if you're just going to be bashing with, your bass player standing right next to the cymbal or next to this, the snare drum or what have you. A lot of times one ear hears better than the others, or you get tinnitus and you start having the ringing of the ears.
And everybody thinks the guitar player is the one that's too loud.
Yeah.
And it's usually the drummer, even if it doesn't sound that way.
Yeah, jackhammers, all that kind of stuff, horrible for your ears.
Right.
And you see these guys that are out, hammering up streets, just breaking up concrete, and then no ear, OSHA didn't give them the whole rundown of like, you must have hearing protection and so on and so forth.
I think I need hearing protection just in the mornings living off of Nolensville Road because they've been working on that thing for 2 years, and it's jackhammers, and it's big jackhammers.
Yeah.
Like the
Yep.
big heavy machinery ones. And we wake up and it's 5:45 in the morning, and it's loud.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, anyone that's going to be using firearms or drummers that, want to practice loud and they want to really, they want to do a Travis Barker kind of a vibe.
So it's deceptive then. So it's like these hits are a lot more destructive than what like a long running waveform.
Yeah. So when you listen to loud music, let's say, how we've all had this experience. Anyone's gone to see a live show. Typically, when the show's over, your ears are ringing, right? You get a little bit of the stuff. You just feel that's called threshold shift. You can actually have it much earlier. You've been overexposed, so your ears are beyond tired. You've actually damaged your ears slightly. So enjoy your young show. Go to the shows while you're young. Enjoy those concerts, because as you get older, it can be not good.
It's true.
But essentially, yes, you have threshold shift, and the threshold shift can be even just monitoring on monitors and mixing. If you mix loud, you need to take a break. You might do that for 2 or 3 minutes, and then push it back down to the sweet spot. Honestly, is 90 decibels.
I've heard several producers and engineers saying that people mix entirely too loud. You need to bring it back. You hear it better, but you think because it's louder, you hear it better, but you just don't. It's not the truth. Yeah,
everybody thinks louder is better, and psychologically speaking, that's true, but biologically speaking, not true.
Wow.
So yes, that is definitely it, and that's why I think it's so strange. I mean, just a little sidebar. Sometimes you might put on a compressor, and you tap it in and out, and it's actually it's got a gain makeup, and so it's increasing it by 3 decibels. 3 decibels is noticeable to an average ear, and people are going to go, oh, I think it sounds better. And the reality is that all you did was just make whatever that sound source was louder.
Yeah.
So it's so easy to do it. So you really have to, if you really want to hear it, and we can get into this at some point when we talk about compression, taking a compressor and putting it in bypass and then activating it and listening to the difference, but gain staging it to where there's no increase in volume, and then you can hear how it's helping shape the transients of whatever it's getting. Okay.
And that's an important conversation. I think for when we do talk about compression, we'll definitely circle back.
100%. Yeah. So, but when we get into threshold shift, that cilia that's standing up inside your inner ear, it's trying to protect the ear. And so the ear naturally tries to adjust, but it can only do that slowly over time. It's not like it's not a microsecond response. Well, a jackhammer or a gunshot or a snare drum or whatever it's in these millisecond types of occurrences, and your ear simply can't adjust in time.
Sure.
And so that's why it's so much more devastating than if you dimed your Marshall stack, your 100-watt head, and you're just playing your Marshall super lead through, a full stack, and you're just having a great old time. Great. Do that for, maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute and a half, and then, start putting something over your ears or get away from it.
So I guess my thought is, so within a certain blast radius, you had multiple deaths, and then as the further you go out, you have multiple injuries, and then the further you go out, you have multiple deafness. At what at 180 decibels, over how far away would you have to be to not come away deaf from that?
You'd have to be hundreds of miles away, more than 300 miles away in this case,
because they said they reported deafness up to 300 miles away.
Yeah, rupturing eardrums.
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally breaking the eardrum.
Sure.
The ear can't handle it. It'd be like us taking a knife and stabbing it through a snare drum head.
What a massive event.
It's incredible. So kind of on that point, we're kind of working our way up the scale, and I was talking about rock concert levels.
Yeah.
Threshold pain's at 120 decibels. Like when you do a rocket launch, and you're within a mile of a rocket launch, say we're going to go down to Cape Canaveral and they were going to put up another satellite or whatever, depending on the payload and the amount of engines that are used, you need to be miles and miles and miles and miles away, and you still need to wear hearing protection that far away.
What is the rocket?
Typically they're going to be decibel wise.
Yeah.
So it's around, it can range, but let's just say on ballpark would be 140 decibels plus. It might go up to 154 decibels.
Right, because I see the videos of all the people that go to watch the shuttle launches. How do they get that close?
Well, they're actually
Without getting
they're
damaged.
further away than you think,
Probably, yeah. Assume,
right? Because they're all
so.
using telephoto lenses.
Right.
You know, they're very far away. I mean, they're 3+ miles away. You know, and if they don't have hearing protection or whatever, they'll be deaf.
Well, what about all the folks that work on site for putting the rock? There's nobody there.
No. There's no one there unless they're in underground bunkers and they've got all kinds of stuff. But no, I mean, when you're dealing with decibels that large, the rocket will damage the payload as much as anything else. So unless you actually stress test, like let's say when we want to shoot up another satellite into space, unless you test it for the amount of decibels that it's going to be subjected to just from the thrusters of the rocket below, it could render the satellite absolutely useless. This is some amazing stuff.
It sounds like that would happen more often than it probably does. We just don't hear about it. Yeah.
If you get into acoustics and you get into it's fascinating. You can go down and look at some of the labs in which they test this material, and you're talking about these incredible rooms that are 10 stories high. And they have this line array of speakers in there. Like imagine the mother lode of all PA systems. And it's generating 150 decibels of it. And they're putting a satellite that's going to be, a $30 million satellite, communications satellite, in the middle of all that because they're trying to subject it to what it's going to be like when it's actually in the rocket itself to shoot it up into, past the stratosphere into orbit. I mean, it's epic.
Yeah.
When you look at how many water gallons have to be released to try to quell, like if you ever look at that, you'll see them unleash an insane tidal wave, it almost looks like, of water as the rockets are coming up, and the payload's getting lifted into the air. You'll see all that stuff happening. They're releasing like 350,000 gallons of water in the space of maybe a couple of minutes. To cool it and to make sure that the trajectory of sound is actually attenuated. So how does that translate into like what is loud for us? How do we sustain that? Because clearly at this point, because it is a sound pressure wave, and we try to relate it into decibels, which is a tenth of a bell being named after Alexander Graham Bell. How do we know what's loud and what's not, and so on and so forth? Well, it turns out we aren't really sure what loud is because loud is relative to the conversation that or the environment that we're in at any given moment, right? So we can get used to hearing something at 80 decibels, but if we were in an environment where we were listening to something really, really quiet, kind of like this, and we're just hearing the whole time. If I came out and started talking like this, we'd be like, wow, that's kind of loud.
Startling. There's a jarring effect.
Yeah. And so our ear doesn't go, you know what? That was 90 decibels, right? Now your smartwatch.
That'd be a great trick.
Yeah, right. Your smartwatch can, right?
Yeah.
Which, like on my Apple Watch, if I'm wearing it and I get around a loud sound source, it'll say, hey, you're in an environment that's registering above 90 decibels.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been in that zone before.
Totally, right? And I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about amplifiers, because this is something that most guitar players and musicians, can relate to, like power amps, like amplifiers. We think about wattage. How do we convert decibels into watt? How do we convert the power rating, and how does that affect the decibel rating?
Right. And you were explaining this to me earlier. It took me a minute to wrap my head around it as a guitar player, right? Because a 50-watt amp is 200-watt amps.
Yeah, right.
I mean, a 100-watt amp is 250-watt amps.
Yeah.
In my head as a guitar player.
Right.
But that is totally incorrect.
Totally incorrect. So the big fallacy, like most guys, if you were a rock guitar player and you just want to be like, yeah, dude, I got a show tonight at Madison Square Garden, I need a 100-watt Marshall amp, right? And then somebody shows up with a 50-watt Marshall head, and you're like, no, man, I got to have that 100-watt. No one's going to be able to hear me. And then if you actually did a decibel reading on it and you measured the loudness from a 50-watt head with a full stack dimed, and you take the same stack and you just switch the head to a 100-watt head, how much louder would you think it is? Now, most guys would go, it's twice as loud.
That's exactly what I would say.
Right.
Twice as loud.
50 watts, 100 watts, it's got to be twice as loud. Turns out it's only 3 decibels louder.
Right.
So that 50-watt head that wasn't getting any love, Those old Marshall JTM 45s, which are my favorite, like the black flags, my favorite Marshall kind of heads. They're 50 watt amps, and they rock.
So how many amps
So
would you need to get double 50?
okay, so
You want
this
to
is-
double if I wanted to be twice as loud as 50 watts,
yeah. If you
how
want
many 100-watt amps do I need?
Okay, so in order for us to double the power, or double so the scale is this: our ear perceives something being twice as loud when it's 10 decibels louder.
Okay.
That's our scale of measurement. Okay, so the ear, for something to feel like it's twice as loud, is only 10 decibels louder.
Okay.
In order for us to get an increase of only 3 decibels, like the 50 watt to the 100 watt, that's it. So every time that we have, let's say, power rating X, and we want it to be twice as loud, we know that we've got whatever this value is, X, in order for it to be 2X, we're going to have to double the power and every time we double the power, we only get a 3 decibel jump. So if we need something 10 decibels louder, which is going to sound twice as loud, we have to double the power basically 4 times, right?
Oh my God. So you need like 10 100-watt amps to double the output of a 50-watt amp.
You're going to need, you'll need 10 100-watt amps
Right.
to double a 100-watt amp. You would need 10.
Oh, okay.
You would need 10 50-watt amps to double the power of a 50-watt
Okay,
amp.
got it. Yeah.
Yeah. For it to feel like it's twice as loud.
Yeah.
So how absurd is
That's
that?
what Kiss did. They were like, we need to be twice as loud. So then they were like, well, you need 10 half stacks. And they're like, give me 20.
Yeah. Think about this. So there's a front of house engineer named Dave Natal, and when I was doing Inside Blackbird, and when I was at Blackbird for all those years, he's an incredible front of house engineer. He's done everybody. I mean, from Kansas to Elton John. He was the guy that was part of Tina Turner's tour when she was the first woman to ever sell out a stadium in Brazil. That huge, epic, What's Love Got to Do with It tour. He was front of house. He also mixes front of house for AC/DC.
Wow.
Okay. Now, that is the loudest guitar I've ever heard in my life. That was my Krakatoa, is Angus Young. Because and for those of you who ever want to go to an AC/DC show, remember this. When you're sitting wherever you are in the stadium, the Angus Young's guitar is coming from stage volume. He's not in the PA at all. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. No. So Dave has to get the rest of the band through the PA. He has to get the band above Angus's stage volume.
That is insane. How many amps does Angus have on stage? I mean,
This is what we're talking
irrelevant
about.
question, but I mean,
that's
yeah.
what we're talking about 10 stacks
Yeah.
timed. We are. Because so we were backstage and it was like, hey man, do you want to hear, come down and check out the show, right? Or whatever. And so we're like, yeah, so anyway, backstage, talking, shooting the shit, whatever. And, Angus's stack is sort of like, off to the left of me. And the guitar tech was getting in just to kind of get a line check, just to make sure that there was signal passing through, right? Well, it was stage volume. And none of us were prepared for it. And he just pulled out an SG and he just does this. Didn't even play a chord. He just muted the strings and went, dude, I just about shit in my pants. That was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. It sounded like someone fired like 5 tanks right behind me.
That's got to be such a challenge to
that's why
mix front of house.
Well, yeah, it is. He has to mix loud.
Yeah.
He has to mix loud. Now, the last time I saw Dave mix was down at the Quarry in Nashville, in Franklin, and it was Jeff Beck's last show and ZZ Top. And it was loud as hell. It was so loud. But Dave mixes really, really loud. Anyway, he's a fantastic front of house guy. I mean, amazing. But I digress. But the idea is that when you have something that loud, you got to wear protection.
Oh yeah.
Because you're not going to come away without the scars.
So where does like a thunderclap rank, like in the decibel levels? And I know it's a tough hit, like drums, but
depends on.
I mean, obviously it depends on. But what can it like? I guess an average. Would you know? I'm just.
I don't know. We'd have to Google that one.
Yeah.
We'd have to consult the oracle.
Consult the AI oracle.
I don't know what an average. It depends on your relative to where the lightning strike happened. What that percussion would be relative to where you are next to it.
Well, I was just thinking of thunderstruck, so it just kind of
Yeah.
took me down that path,
Yeah.
AC/DC. So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's loud to be sure, but it's might be 100 decibels, I mean, it's not as loud as a rock concert.
So all of this, like we talk about protecting your ears and how the dangers of SPL, right? Mm-hmm. Is, in typical American fashion, I start to think like, how do you weaponize something like that?
Yes. We are going to talk about LRADs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my first question as a red-blooded American has to do with violence, is how do you weaponize SPL? And I know that it has been in ways, but we were discussing earlier, the strangest thing, one of the strangest things that I've ever heard of, relating to I've never heard about Krakatoa. So tell me about the weaponization of SPL.
Well, you can use it to kill your opponent or prey. Okay. If you're, in that sort of predatorial mindset. We can do it on land, but it typically happens, it's much more common for it to happen underwater. So underwater, there's one sort of animal underwater that is a shellfish that we know as pistol shrimp.
Delicious.
So, exactly.
As any good Louisiana person would say.
That's right.
Can you make a po' boy with it?
That's right. Po shrimp. Pistol shrimp po' boy.
Pistol shrimp po' boy.
Yeah. I don't have a side of king cake. But what they do, so the pistol shrimp, they have this mechanism that almost looks like a pistol, like the hammer gets cocked back and then, right? They're able to just do this. They're able to do it at basically 37,000 RPM. So it's like it when it moves, it is incredibly fast. And what it does is it creates a cavitation bubble underneath the water. And when that pops, it is incredibly loud. Now, when I say incredibly loud, we talked about Krakatoa being 180 decibels.
Yeah.
Right? Loudest sound ever recorded, in the air. But underneath, they can reach 218 decibels.
And the size of your pinky, these shrimp?
Yeah, they can get long. They can get the size of your palm, okay. But yeah, typically, and there's shoals of them, they all live. So in like sponges, they'll have the whole 9 yards. It's incredible, this mentality of how but there's so many different types and species of shrimp. But the pistol shrimp are the ones that kind of what we're talking about now. But their clap, of this snapping of their claw, can kill or stun the prey. It just, in a microsecond, just because of the way that it works. And, you think about it, that they're snapping this. Have you ever tried to clap your hands underwater?
No, but I can imagine.
I have many times.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Because you're displacing so much volume of water to try to get this. And they're doing the same kind of thing, but they're making it work. Now, but they're making it work with such efficiency. Not only that, but sound travels basically 4 times, I think it's 4.33 times faster in water, because it's a solid medium, whereas air, there's a lot of, just empty space. So under the water, it just becomes incredible. Snap shrimp or pistol shrimp were such a part. The U.S. Navy, we used to use it in World War II. We would actually hide our submarines above shoals of pistol shrimp because it would white out sonar. Now, when these shoals of shrimp get together and they start snapping, so to speak, they can approach 248 decibels. Right, but now they're lasting milliseconds, right? But if you think about how quickly this is happening, they create sonobioluminescence or sonoluminescence, which is sound creating light.
What? How does that work?
Just from the speed of how everything works. In fact, if you measure it out, the actual snap of the pistol shrimp is hotter than the surface of the sun. It's 4,700 degrees, which is hotter than the surface of the sun.
Is that a wave intersection between sound and light frequency,
Yeah.
and that's how that happens.
Yeah. The sound wave is so percussive that it's generating light.
Wow. So how do we use it to light homes? Those are the things that I want to know. It's like, what is the application of this shrimp?
Right. Pistol shrimp.
Yeah.
How do you power your home? Pistol shrimp.
I use pistol shrimp to power my home. It's really, I was thinking about shrimp stealth too. It's like getting hidden from the submarines and stuff like that during World War II. Shrimp stealth is a funny thing.
Like even at a mile away, they can reach 190 decibels. At that level, it whites out sonar completely. It can deafen operators. It can dent the propellers of ships.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Man. I never heard of it before.
It's absolutely phenomenal the amount of sound that can be in water and just the types of animals that are down there. Same thing with like humpback whales and sperm whales and others. I mean, if they blast a song, they can hit in this upper range of what we're talking about with the pistol shrimp. They can be upward in that 180 decibels, 152 decibels. Either way, that's lethal for human beings. They can render you unconscious just by the actual pressure wave.
And it's obviously amplified in the water.
Yeah.
Because if you take the pistol shrimp out and he tries to do his little snap at you, it's not gonna deafen you. It's not gonna blind you. It's not gonna kill you.
Yeah, and it's happening at such speed that it's invisible to the human eye. It's happening that quick when they snap. And I think of it this way, like probably you remember when first time you ever learned to do a can opener. Did you ever learn to do like a can opener or a preacher seat or whatever? Yeah. You know that sound that happens? So like when you go in for the tuck, right? And then as soon as that leg hits the water and then you really lean back into it, you hear this boom underneath the water. Imagine that, but happening with this, with the pistol shrimp. It's infinitely almost louder just by them clicking this with their mechanism.
It's hard to imagine that kind of power. Like, dream with me. There's a 50-pound pistol shrimp.
Okay.
Right? What's that? You know what I mean? What? If that ever, just to say, like, some kind of mutation happened, that force has still existed, right? It's just in a larger. So
theoretically, although I wonder if you get how we reach terminal velocity in the air.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's like a terminal velocity in water. I mean, this is way above my pay grade.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I'm asking questions.
Yeah, I'm more thinking about what do I play over an altered dominant chord. You know? But I mean, this is still really fascinating stuff. It just goes to show, and you hear people say this all the time, especially marine biologists and even astronauts. We know more about outer space than we know about our own oceans.
Sure.
Right? And God, man, that's so fascinating to me because all life comes from the ocean. I mean, it's just a huge amount of what actually gives us the oxygen that we breathe is not from the trees. It's actually from the oceans.
Sure. But the Anunnaki, they were not from the ocean, right? They were from...
Or maybe, was it like a different kind of ocean?
Maybe.
I don't know.
The ocean of space, man.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. It's the ocean of space.
For you guys who don't know who the Anunnaki is, we're not going to get into that in this episode.
Give them a little.
This podcast is evolving.
Yeah, or devolving.
Maybe a little bit. Protect your ears, folks.
But to your point, so yeah, underneath the water, there are incredibly loud creatures from large and small. And some of the biggest on the earth to some of the smallest on the earth can generate the same almost dynamic range of decibels, measurable decibels underneath the waves.
It's so incredible.
It is.
I wonder, if we were underwater, and I know that our hearing, we can still hear underwater to a degree, is if we're near a school of pistol shrimp, would we be able to even register it in our ears?
Yeah, I
don't know.
Hard
to know. It's just curious because it is measured. We measure it using machines and programs and things like the computers to do that. But nobody was sitting under the water and being like, "Oh, it's a loud ass shrimp."
Well, you know what? It's a good point because when you're dealing with sonar, you're dealing with frequency ranges that are well beyond human hearing.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of thing. I mean, who knows if we had an expanded hearing range, like maybe that of a dog or a cat, and we were underwater, maybe we could hear it. Maybe we can hear it. Maybe some of the lower, sort of sounds of the ocean are a product of residual reverberant activity that's happening not only from the motion of the waves, but if we were in deep sea or sort of mid sea kind of levels, like we're not going to go down into the bottom canyons of the ocean floor, but just sort of stay in the Mariana Trench kind of things. But we're sort of in that zone where we're down maybe 1,000 feet, which is black, right?
Yeah.
What's that sound like there?
We were talking about Death Clock and how they had the episode where they had a recording studio on a submarine because they were trying to get as close to hell as possible when recording their metal record. If you were to do that, say like you were to put a recording studio on a submarine and go down as far as you could, does sound behave differently even though it's not in the water?
Yeah. Yeah, because yes.
Ultimate compression.
Because at a certain point, helium becomes a whole different thing, because when you're dealing with pressure as you go down in barometric pressure, or it increases, so to speak. But the lower that you go down, the higher the pressure is.
Right.
Right. So that's why you get the bends. That's why divers have to have these staging periods, because they don't want to have too much oxygen release in the blood. I mean, they can have an embolism. They can die. They can go. Right. They can go insane. They can hallucinate.
Great record, by the way, the bends.
But there's dive watches that are made. I mean, this dive watch will go down to like 4,000 feet, but it has a helium escape valve on the side, because helium will wreck a watch when it gets low down. The pressure is so great that the gases that actually are happening in the air get compressed to the point that they have to be released. And if they can't be released, the whole watch will basically just blow up. It'll crack.
Your watch has a helium release valve on it?
Yeah, that can only be triggered if you ever go down. I don't ever want to go down to 4,000 feet.
Sure.
I'm not interested in the death clock.
You don't want to go try the watch?
No.
Stress test.
James Cameron has, though.
Oh yeah.
He has the same thing, and he used it on his thing. But he's into submersibles, and he did the Titanic. But he's a renowned, sort of deep sea diver.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man.
He comes back though.
He comes back, unlike the movies.
Or the rich people that decided to take their
Dude.
Their little journey down to the Titanic, huh?
Yeah, so that's a big lesson in quality control. When you get an overzealous entrepreneur that's got, some debt and needs to make good on it, and he's charging, what did they pay? It was like $2 million or something to go down there with the designer of it. Yeah, and you're in a ceramic, just container that's under hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds of pressure. One micro crack, instant implosion. Nothing exploded, it imploded.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the things that they said that they found, because they went and found the wreckage of the unit, I forgot what it was called. The guy had routed everything to a PlayStation controller, so he could steer it with a video game controller. That's the high quality that we're talking about in this submersible.
I mean, at what point how many red flags need to go up before you before you pull the plug?
I wonder if you saw any pistol shrimp. I wonder if they, maybe that's what caused the.
Maybe
they got attacked by a swarm.
Yeah, maybe they landed on a shoal of pistol shrimp and pissed them off.
Things can
and
happen.
They just went, and they were gone. But again, quick death.
Quick death.
Yeah.
The theme of this week's episode is
right.
Ways to die very quickly through SPL.
That's right. 1 million ways to die underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on land, we do have what are called LRADs. And LRAD is acoustic weaponry. It's a long-range acoustic device where what it's able to do is basically take a sound wave. Typically, they can be audible if they want to put it in the audible range. It depends on the design of the LRAD, but most likely it'll be infrasonic or ultrasonic. And what they'll do is highly concentrate that beam with a parabolic concentrator, and it will basically just it's almost like a laser beam, like a laser targeting sight on a like a sniper rifle or some type of assault rifle. It can just laser target, and if you're in that beam, it can cause all kinds of side effects, and it depends upon, remember, because sound's a pressure wave,
Right.
So it doesn't mean that we can hear it, but it's a pressure wave, and if you hit that pressure wave, or I should say, if it hits you, for mild beginners, in the sense of like what would be a first symptom, you could get vertigo immediately. You could start having fainting spells. You could start not being able to put a thought together,
Right.
and have trouble, just with cognition, basic cognition and functioning.
Well, I saw that they used it for riot control
Yep.
for a while, and now that is outlawed. They can't use it for that anymore.
Yeah.
What kind of practical usage is there for? You mentioned some seafaring tactics.
We've used it on the Somali pirates in the past.
Okay.
The U.S. Navy has, and that's pretty interesting because you can just target it, and then just basically you could knock out the crew, But again, it depends upon how much pressure is coming through that concentrated weapon, But I mean, that's fantastic. And I think
Well, it's
honestly,
well, I mean, it can be lethal, but it's a non-lethal way of detaining, right? In some kind of format,
yeah.
you can use it for that.
Yeah,
So-
and even if you put it in the audio range, there's a whole thing that starts to happen. It's related to this thing called the Haas effect, which HAAS, and the Haas effect is basically where there is a delay that starts to happen where it's just late enough that it widens out this sort of stereo field, and you can't. It just sounds. But when you get it to a certain point where you keep increasing the delay time, it's almost like we've probably had this experience where we'd be talking on the phone, like maybe we're on speakerphone, and our whoever we're talking to is as well, and somehow there's a feedback loop that's happening. Like you're hearing your voice come through their phone on the other end as it's coming back to you, and it's disorienting. Like it's hard for you to have a complete sentence.
Yeah, because it's an interruption.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the most effective way. So if someone's on a bullhorn and they're shouting all types of obscenities or what have you, you can actually sort of aim one of these devices at them, and it will basically give the same type of effect.
Wow.
And then after that point, they can't put two and two together, and then they just end up stopping because they can't complete a sentence. So that's a much more humane way of doing it. But the LRADs are very real.
They say that LRADs were used in the invasion of Venezuela to go capture Maduro recently.
Wouldn't surprise
So
me.
I imagine, the technology has gotten to a point where the U.S. military is like, well, this makes a lot of sense.
Oh, it's amazing because there's no evidence.
Right.
There's no shell casing to pick up. There's no percussive effect. If it's
There's no burns. There's no, right.
right, if it's ultra or hypersonic, then you're kicking ass.
Yeah, prove it.
And no, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that also happens with the Havana syndrome. Where we see this happen every once in a while in Cuba, where some diplomat, I think the latest round were some Canadian diplomats. This was probably like last year or so, where they were having a lot of cognition issues. They were having a lot of like mucus and bleeding from their eardrums and other things like that. And that's probably because they're been subjected to some type of high pressure wave that's very concentrated. Could it be from an LRAD? If you're in the conspiratorial mindset, I would say yes.
Could be, yeah.
But you can also have things that happen in a natural environment that can happen this way. So there was this one case, I can't remember exactly where. It was in New York City. There was a lab that was up on an upper story building, like the 8th or 9th floor. And this particular chemist, there was a chemistry lab, he thought the place was haunted. Right?
Okay.
Okay. And he's a this was a scientist, no eschew religion, right? But essentially he kept seeing visions and hearing voices, and all kinds of crazy things started to happen in his lab where beakers would move, no earthquake, but like things were moving. And he was like seeing things, and his vision was getting but it only happened in the lab.
Interesting.
Once he left the lab and he went out, everything returned to normal. But when he went into that lab, it was like Spooksville. It was like The Haunting, it was Amityville horror type of thing, right? And so they called in, the sort of the Ghostbusters,
Yeah.
and they basically were like, we can't figure it out. Well, then they called in an acoustician, and the acoustician came in and started to measure it and was like, oh, there's a huge concentrated node here coming from it was a concentration of low frequencies, and it's coming from some device that's being emitted. And so they finally traced it back, and it was blocks away. There was a whole new building that had gone in that had a huge HVAC system put in on the rooftop, and it was generating this somehow acoustically bouncing off other buildings and everything else. And bass frequencies are omnidirectional, so you'd think it would happen in other places, but for some reason it was just one of those kind of like crazy phenomena that focused it, and that lab happened to be right in a node of the waveform. Boom. And
wow.
And then so that was what was happening.
That's crazy. I wonder how many mixed phenomena can probably be explained by something like that.
I think it happens all the time.
It's got to, right?
Yeah.
It would be very odd if it didn't.
I mean, everything is vibration.
Yeah.
Everything is a frequency. And we were talking about it earlier this morning, like there's this huge gap in our senses, right? I mean, smell, taste, touch, they're very closely related to each other in the sense that we can perceive those, and there's not a lot of overlap, that's lost. They're very closely next to each other.
Those don't necessarily detect waves at any format. It's more of a vibration. The eyes and the ears, though.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. So when we get into sight and sound, there's this. We only hear like this tiny range of 20 hertz to 20K, right? If we're being conservative on the top end, and then sight happens way over here, and then there's all of these other types of wavelengths that we can't see, gamma, infrared. I mean, just all the different light forms that we're able to appreciate, color spectrum, and those are frequencies. We're seeing the frequency, and so I bet if we kind of came back to this planet like if we were aliens, okay, maybe we are, and we were able to see outside of these eyes, I bet our air is colored. We just can't see it.
Sure, that's totally possible.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But I mean, because if you think about the whole idea of like what makes the sky blue and so on and so forth, and you look at rarefaction and the whole idea of light waves, sort of bouncing off the atmosphere and moving out into color spectrums and like a prism does. Yeah, I mean, who knows? But we only have our senses that we know to work with, right? That's what we're born with. That's what we get if we're lucky.
Right. If we're lucky, yeah.
Right.
True.
So,
it's very, very important as we get older, we know, to protect these things and cherish them for what they are, the gift that they are. Yeah. But today we talked about a lot, man. We talked about volcanoes and shrimp and LRADs, pirates, ghosts. I mean, we kind of hit it all today. So we'll keep it simple. Next week we'll just talk about compressors.
Yeah, let's talk about compressors next week. That'll be.
You want to wrap it up?
Yeah. I don't know how to wrap it up.
There's a signal in the speakers, there's a buzz in the line. From the tape machine hiss to the plugins we believe. It's the earworm.